everyone, you are listening to the Manifesting Straight Talk podcast, and I'm your host, Rachel Chamley. I'm a mindset and manifesting coach from the UK, and I am here to ignite that fire inside of you. If you are a female entrepreneur or change maker, or just a woman that is wanting more from life, then you are in exactly the right place. I am going to give you my no-nonsense, straight-talking advice to manifesting and show you how to take your life to that next level. So if you're ready, dive in now. Hi everyone, welcome to this week's podcast episode. This week I am joined by an amazing guest. I have Jennifer Germaine here, who is a business, life and transformational coach. I will let her tell you all about herself. So hi Jennifer, thanks for joining me.
Oh yes, I'm so happy to be here, Rachel. It's just been such a joy talking to you, and I can't wait to see what comes out of our podcast together.
So me and Jennifer met in New York. So all my listeners will be sick of me talking about New York because I'm like, I bring it up every episode now. I'm like, where I went? We did get the honor to meet there, and it was such an amazing event. But the best thing was the people that I got to meet off the back of it. So Jennifer is one of those people. So tell us more about what you do, Jennifer. And I said free flow.
Yeah, I love that. Yes, it was beautiful being in that room, but I won't sit on in New York because one of the things that fascinated me about you is that you're from, like across the pond.
Yeah.
My family is from there originally. My grandmother is from there, so I always love talking to you about that.
Yeah.
A little bit about me actually is before coaching, I was a lawyer for years, and my whole career was being a lawyer. I went out on my own, started my own business. I grew my law firm to a national presence in the United States.
Wow.
In a very short period of time. It was about in 3 years, I was speaking across the nation. I was talking in my field. I was seen as the thought leader expert in my industry, and I loved it.
Wow.
There was a piece of me that absolutely loved it. I loved the way I was getting my message out into the world. It was very unique, and I tapped into how to do it in a very different way from everyone else. And I built up a team behind me. But there was this moment where I had to come to the realization that this was never meant to be my life path. And I've known this in every probably cell of my body. When I set off to be a lawyer, I actually randomly became a lawyer. I like to say, like my last year in university, I decided to go on to law school. So it wasn't a life path for me from a little child. But I knew this wasn't right for me. And it was this internal struggle that I went through of like, how do you climb and make this successful company and then decide that you would like to give it all up? And I ended up doing that. I started a coaching practice a few years ago, 2019, where I love mindset. I love working with people on how to shift things for themselves. And I had other aspects of myself that started to show up when I started to look at my life differently outside of the lens of being a lawyer. And I let my law firm go. So I actually sold my law firm to another national law firm last year so I could fully step into just doing the coaching instead of doing both, where I was really the CEO of the law firm and also doing the coaches. I was like, man, I'm just ready to just be me. And that is somebody that's a lot more. Thank you. It's incredible. It was painful. It was grief-filled. It was like all the emotions wrapped into essentially letting go of an identity of who everyone knows you as, or a lot of people that knows me as. And my clients had worked with me for years, decades even, and letting it go to become something new, becoming who I desire to be the most.
Yeah, I've got so many questions spinning just from that intro. I will start. What were you originally doing at university? I'm intrigued.
Yeah, so I'm going to go a little bit back before that. When I was in high school, I thought I was going to be a doctor or a pharmacist. And then I was like, I do not want to go to school that long. So I stopped myself from doing that. It's crazy to think about. And I actually went into accounting. Big difference, right?
Yeah.
So I knew numbers. Numbers just come very naturally easy. I'm very logical minded. It's important in the work that I do now because I see patterns. Patterns are very easy. Law school, I did the same thing. I was in a very number generated tax area. But the thing that was missing for me actually was the healing aspect that I was probably very drawn to in the doctor or pharmacist, because all of my previous was in medical that I was doing up until through high school. And I leaned into kind of integrating both in the work that I do now. So that's a great question.
Yeah. No, it just intrigued me when you said that you changed. So obviously, I thought you leaving the law firm was an incredibly brave and exciting move, but lots of people probably didn't feel that way, I can imagine. So how's it been for you to take that leap and actually say to everybody, you know, this is what I'm doing? Everybody probably thought you were crazy, I bet.
Yeah, it was very interesting because I always think that the world reflects back to you, or people reflect back to me what they're actually experiencing on the inside, right?
Yeah.
We're all mirrors for each other. And there would be some of my clients where I would tell them that I was moving on, and immediately they'd be like, "Oh, you're sick. What's
Wow.
happening? Are you dying?" Yes, it was very interesting. Like something must be really wrong for me to give up that situation. So I would say over half of the people reflected that back to me. The other ones were like, "What are you doing next? I'm so excited for you." They were lit up for me, fully supportive. Everyone was really quite supportive, although it impacted them and I gave them options. Even my team, some of them are like, "Well, I feel somebody that had worked with me for a long time. She was like my right hand woman in my law firm. She said, I wondered if something was going on for you. And I've seen you change so much and where you've taken the law firm. I'm not surprised." It was like this spectrum of everything you can imagine, but it was such an interesting way of seeing how the world will really reflect back individuals' own internal thoughts, fears, desires back to them. Because some people, you could tell if they were interested in a transition, like they wish they could do something like me, they would ask me all the questions about it, right? And my experience on the inside was everything in between. It took me several months to get to the point where, Jen, you can do this.
Yeah.
And do this for yourself, right? Because I had been a person my whole life where I was taking care of others, pleasing others, taking care of my clients to a very strong degree, and unpacking that for myself to figure out who am I was a big step that I had to take before you can let go of something like that. So that was definitely a process for me.
And do you have one of them moments that you can look back on and think, this is the bit where I had to make a change, or there was a trigger that set off your journey potentially?
That's a very good question, Rachel. It all started, I'm going to really go back a little bit and say that I like doubled my revenue, was speaking on stages all within a 6-month period of time. So I just went bananas, it feels like. And then I actually got shingles down my face, like on my face, and it was an extreme amount of pain. It took me out for about a month, and I was like, something's going on. I'm working too much. I was a workaholic. So at that moment, I made the decision to go to a 10-day retreat to look at a lot of emotional healing and why we get set in patterns, like why our mind continues to have us showing up in such a habitual and conscious way. It was about 3 or 4 days into that retreat. There's 40 other strangers with me that I was getting to know. My mind went silent.
Wow.
And there was no thoughts. There was nothing. And I remember them specifically saying, "What's in your mind right now?" And all 40 of us were like, "Nothing." It was the first time in my life I'd ever experienced that. And what emerged for me is, a couple days later, I really do not want to be a lawyer. I've known this inside of me forever. I really would like to work with people in a much deeper and more intimate way and have deep connections with individuals. And I'm ready to take a move. So just the spaciousness I gave myself to figure out like why this is going on for me, why these patterns happened, and then giving myself the space to actually process and be like, this is my next steps. That's what changed everything for me.
And that's so counterintuitive, isn't it, for people, because they feel they've got to figure everything out and all you've got to do is get quiet.
Yes, I actually say that. I think I have had such a huge growth journey. I'm sure you have too.
Yeah.
And it's from getting quiet. I say creating the space for yourself over and over again to go inward. I think that was the hardest part of my journey so far, is literally that first initial reaction. Because then I had to go back to this, what I'd created, and create space over and over again to continue to align with where I wanted to go. But that's hard, man. When you've always been the responsible one figuring it out, it is so counterintuitive. I say the same thing because everyone's just like, keep going, do more, do more. And now it's like, no, shut off more. And do less.
And I know when I'm pushing and I have to go, no, Rachel, like And it's hard, especially in business where you want to just keep going and fighting through, but you've just got to step back. And then that's when you get the gold. You know, people listening to this podcast will know I get my best ideas in the bath. The whole boot camp was written in my head in the bath. You know, that is my space. The old me, the one that used to fire through everything, would never have thought that was the case. I know when I first started my journey, and mine was originally just thinking of a hobby, and I was just interested in tarot and different things like that. And I used to ask everybody, you know, how do you learn it? And they were like, meditation. And I used to think, how can meditation teach you how to do that? And I couldn't get my head around, and I resisted it for so long. And then meditation literally changed my life. But we do resist it so much.
Yes, I was the same. I was on a meditation yoga journey. I was like, I just don't get it. And now I was like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
I remember I had a banker once to say, what do you like to do on your free time? What's one of your hobbies? And I literally replied back that I love to sit in open space, and I'll just lay down and sometimes just look up in a room, like on a soft rug, and not have anything on, no technology, no devices. And I just sit there. And I remember him looking at me like, that was the weirdest response I've ever received. I was like, it's the best because all your ideas come through, and it's just like you can download things, and you can have, it's just like this sensation comes over me of complete joy.
Yeah. And that's so natural. That is our natural state. And that's the bit that people don't tend to get. You know, that joy is your natural state. Fear is learned. A lot of people just think the fear is the normal.
I mean, I did for a long time. I trumped over my body sensations because now my body will tell me when I'm doing too much. I trumped over my intuition. I had no idea how intuitive. We can talk about that. I know we've talked about that, and just so much information that was coming in because I preferred to do more and lean into the fear. And I had no idea that that's actually just, I like to say it's the darkness covering up everything. It's just dark patterns covering up the light and the joy and the play that's inside of each of us. And I'm sure you've had similar experiences, Rachel.
Yeah, definitely. Tell everybody more about how your intuition now works in your business, and also you touched on the play, so you're bringing that into life a lot more now with your business as well. So share what you're doing there.
Let's start with play, because I just love the concept of play. I mentioned to you when we started this podcast that the last week I had been taking time for play. I'd stopped and I noticed I went to New York. When I get in around a lot of people that are doers, I can jump back into my doing mode until I catch it. And then I was like, okay, something's going on. My right shoulder's like not feeling very comfy. That's a sign for me that I'm doing too much.
Oh,
so I had to take Really? Oh, that's fascinating.
I seen a post the other day as well, and your right shoulder is something about obligations, feeling obligated. And I was like, oh, that is good.
Yeah, and so my right hip will fire too. That's the other spot I carry a lot of it, and it's not moving forward.
Yeah.
So it's like fascinating. They're always speaking to us. So I took a step back and I started to look at where is there fear, which the way I do it is I go in and I just start to get into play. I'll check in. It's like, what's something playful, ridiculous? Almost a childlike wonder, checking with my inner child. I mean, like, where do you want to play? She comes up with the most ridiculous things possible. I know one point last week, do you know who Chuck Norris is? The guy that like when we were growing up that used to fight. She told me to act like Chuck Norris in the yard. So I had to go out and fight like Chuck Norris, like so ridiculous. And I was like,
anybody
watching,
listening, there has just been karate style moves going on.
Thanks for translating, Rachel. I mean, they were fantastic karate moves, but it's stuff like that where it just takes you so out of your head. You start laughing and playing, and my dog was jumping with me, and I was like, "This is the most ridiculous thing," and it just takes you into a completely different vibe. So I do that a lot, and then it'll allow me to look back, and I'll download just like all the fear messages will come racing in right after. So then I can write them down, I can process them and see like, oh, here's all the doing you're doing that's actually not getting you anywhere. What if you lean more into play, and then you can I find my intuition and more about who I am when I'm doing that.
Yeah. And I love that concept because everybody does the inner child work, but a lot around the comfort and the, trying to, soothe the inner child, which is great. But you do have to give them that bit of life as well, and, let them run the show, because they'll tell you what they need.
We really do. And, I did the comforting thing for a long time, and a lot of clients I work with, for me, it's actually not very easy to feel into joy and play at times. It was conditioned out of me as a little girl when we talk about like patterns. So I actually have to consciously practice leaning into it over and over again. And I do this with clients too. And it's about creating experiences. So I think of the work I do as how can I lean into very playful experiences, like literally force myself to do them, even in front of people or whatever, so that I can take other people through it to be like, hey, remember, this is play.
Yeah.
We're so serious as business people. We really serious. And it's just like, but what's life worth living if there's no play?
I know. And as women, I know with working with the women I work with, they are so serious, like we all are. And even for me, it was hard to think, well, what do I enjoy? If I had a pastime, what would I want to do? It is hard because, like you say, you get it conditioned out of you, especially girls have to be very sensible growing up, get the good grades, be prim, be proper, especially here in the UK. It's very like that. And it's hard to bring that back out of you when it's been held down so much.
Yeah. And I'll ask you your experience of this. For me, there's been times until I hired a coach to take me through it, I was actually blank. I could not figure out what play was. I thought I kind of knew, but I also knew I wasn't feeling the depths of joy that I was desiring to lean into. I could see it in other people. That's how I knew. I was like, wow, look how free they are. Yeah. I know I'm not tapping into that. So I had to go and hire people that I saw it in that were coaches to be like, can you figure out how to do that? And it was through experiencing them in play or joy, or sexuality, sensuality, it's all of it, right? It was that spectrum that I didn't have the ease to reach into. So I ended up training myself through other people. And now that's a lot of the work I do too. What's that like for you? Mine, I mentioned, I kind of just was blank. It wasn't there. Like, what was your relationship with play, or whichever one you want to pick?
Was exactly the same. My thought of having fun was, my weekends out. Now, through the relationship I was in, and also with being, just a workaholic, and everything was around me being ultimately the breadwinner, really, in the relationship. So there was a lot of pressure. And I think I just forgot how to have fun that didn't involve, fun was going out drinking and having a dance type of thing. That was fun. And looking back, it was a hiding things, getting out of that pattern of what I was in, and actually allowing myself to take the pressure off, and allowing help, and allowing, different people support me in a different way, started to bring my sparkle back out, whereas I dulled it for a long time. So, and I think I genuinely had that quirkiness as a kid, and I would, I'd be trying to get ready for school, and I remember my mum trying to push me along, and I'd have like a crop top on my head pretending to be an astronaut and run around the sitting room, just doing absolutely crazy things. They all thought I was nuts, but that was what I was genuinely like. But I forgot that along the way. Now I'm bringing about having the interaction with people that I have, and building my confidence, and getting out in nature. I'm starting to bring that fun out. But I think where I didn't have a coach, I had a partner that brought that out of me. So he is actually older, but he's allowed me to be more free, which has taught me to have more fun. I think he's, pushed me to just be, well, why aren't you just doing that stupid thing, or have that bit of cake, or, just the stuff that, like, why are you stopping yourself? I think he questions me like a coach would. He's like, why would that even be something you restrict? And that's been fascinating to watch, because I resisted that at the very beginning.
I love that you have that in your life.
Yeah.
Now, so I really do think it comes down, I call them sacred collaborations, like the people in our world that can bring there's people that can bring you down, and we all talk about that, but there's also people that can really bring us out. And the questions, it's the same. It's all of a sudden somebody mentions a question like, why are you dimming that? I always say dimming the light. You're like, why do we dim that light?
I know. Why?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Just because we were taught that way, right? And there's so many that
I think it comes down to them roles you start to play, especially as a woman. And a big one for me, and probably you felt this with being in the law firm, putting that mask on, that I stepped into a role that, when you look at my personality and what I like to do, I'm very creative, very intuitive. Whereas actually I was in a role as a planner and having to be the strategist in our relationship and having to do all of that. That was very draining for me. I don't want to be the one making every single decision for both people in that party. So knowing your relationship and how you're potentially not in your own zone of genius as well. So.
Yeah, I feel that one completely, because that's how I felt in the law firm, is I was making so many decisions all the time.
Yeah.
And it created like this very strict structure for me. And I was wearing a lot of masks as well, like always pleasing others, where I lost myself completely. And I feel a lot of women, the women I work with, the very high achieving women, lose themselves a lot, but they might even not realize they're lost. Is the ones I run into, and how much joy is possible for them. But that's why I love what I do.
And how do you work with women to bring that out?
Yeah, so I privately work with women that come. Usually they're looking for some kind of new business results, actually, or they're going through a large life transition like I did, letting go of one industry to step into another, or they're really trying to get in touch with their intuition. Whether they know it or not, anyone that likely comes into my world is a highly intuitive person, and I can help bring it out by them experiencing themselves in a new way, by leaning into like the joy, pleasure, sensuality, the good stuff, the good in life, as I like to say, and identifying pattern. I actually feel I'm a master at seeing where their mind's at and the limiting beliefs that they keep telling themselves in their writing or the way they speak, and I can catch it and help them see it in a different way. So yeah, that's the main way that I work with women.
Yeah. And how about your intuition? How does that come out for you?
It's always I love this conversation with you, Rachel. For me, my intuition is a lot in reading other people's energy and emotions. And that helps me significantly, because I can tell what's popping up when fear or an activation arises, so it can be looked at instead of judged or allowing that person to judge themselves. It's something to grow out of, something to be seen for what it is, and realize, oh, that's not actually you. Like you mentioned at the very beginning, we are all joy, but we've got these patterns that try to tell us otherwise. And I'm really great at seeing and feeling those come up. I'll actually feel a lot of my clients through my own body at times, and then I can reflect back, is this going on for you? And they're like, how you know that? I was like, oh, it's a little gift, a little extra sixth sense in the 5D. But that's how I a lot of time do it, because I've had experiences where I just felt wrong all the time. That's a little bit of my patterning. And a lot of the women that work with me have that in them as well, where they haven't been very loving to themselves, but they don't even realize it's going on. There's this like wrongness making, and bringing that out to be in a container where it's like, man, I can fill you with your love cup up. And let you see, and then they start to light up, like their intuition comes out, the pieces of them that they were covered up. It's kind of like, this is how I describe it, it's almost like clouds on a sunny day. We are all sun, but our clouds get in the way, so we can't see the sun.
Yeah, I love that description. That's so true. And it's getting to people to believe that that's true. It takes a lot to get there sometimes, especially like you say, for successful women who are used to a different way of working, that masculine way of working. It's suddenly a big shift.
Yeah, and our logical minds have to come along, like, right? If you were a planner, I was a lawyer, we're little brilliant geniuses, and our mind's always like, I don't know about that. That seems woo, or that seems a little out there. What is this? So you have to bring that piece of you with along on the ride and explain it to them the whole time. Do you see that in what you do too? Like how to be a fighting between the two?
Yeah, I mean, I was the planner in my old relationship, having to take charge. But in my actual work, I was a leadership coach. So working with a lot of inner male dominant industry. So it's interesting, shall we say, about the culture and the way that, you can see that. One thing I've really noticed is the one woman at a table type of vibe. And I think that's hard for women to get used to, that there's space for everyone. Did you find that, obviously coming from, being a lawyer, there probably wasn't that many women at your level? How did you find that?
Yeah, we're so similar in ways, because I actually worked in the male dominated construction industry, so my law firm was. So I was one of the only women, and it played with me for a long time because I desired to be a speaker, and I went to these conferences where I was one of probably 10 women out of the 500 that were there. I did not see myself reflected on stage either, but I desired to be there. And that's how I actually got all my clients and grew so quickly, as I leaned into that instead of running away because I didn't see anyone reflecting that for me. All of my insights wanted to run away, but I had a good coach at the time that said, no, lean in here.
Yeah.
And what I found out, it was just messages in my own head that somehow I am separate or different from the masculine. We are all masculine, feminine. And what I found, it was one of the aspects of me that made me so successful, is when I could lean more into the creative feminine energy, the intuition, the receiving of others. Like there's a lightness, I think, in the feminine aspect where people are going through stuff. And a lot of the men I worked with, everyone was masculine and hard on them, or they were hard on others. And to be the opposite energy for them to come down off of that, I believe that led to a tremendous amount of success. Everything changed when I didn't consciously know I was doing this, but that's what I was doing underneath, is I was receiving people in a different way instead of masculine. I always say it's like guarded, and it's like going against each other. If anyone wants to know, I'm like hitting my fists together here because like magnets that are going to repel each other instead of like different energies coming together, which I found fascinating, actually.
Yeah, and now you say that, that's really what took my career off, because I decided that when I wanted to go into coaching, that I had to drop all the masks, all the labels, all the hierarchy. And I was doing it because I was passionate about it, not because I needed to work my way up the ladder. And all the fight just dropped away. And what allowed me was to bring my true self. So in every interaction, whether it was corporate or what I do outside, this is me. And that works better. People respect it more. And also it allows them to take the mask off and open up more.
Yeah, 100%. Because once I would soften to receive somebody in a new way, I'm not guarded. Like I don't have any defenses up, or I'm not the masks, right? I don't have my masks on. So when I took my mask off and pretended to be somebody else, and I was just allowed myself to be, it opens other people and it allows for a lot deeper connection. And then I always said, like, people become your raving fans then, because they're like, they don't know logically why, but what's going on under the surface is they're like, wow, that person holds a container that I'm not used to. I feel really good in this space with them.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. It's really about being that unguarded and receptive quality in life.
I love that. So what interesting things have you been through? Obviously you did your 10-day retreat, but that was just the beginning. So what else have you been exploring?
Lately it's like leaning into exploring my intuition and see what's there, and leaning into new experiences where I actually, when do I notice I'm guarded or my like mask will come up? Even an example of this, I did ecstatic dancing for the first time this weekend. And it's just everyone dancing for themselves with music playing. I have never experienced this before. It was the most beautiful experience I've had in a long time. I now think I'm slightly obsessed, but it was just this room of everyone, just literally everyone like dancing completely in their own world, having their own journey. And it's just 8:30 a.m. on a Sunday. It was amazing. So it was that experience, because at first going there, I was like, oh, wow, I'm really nervous. I don't know what this experience is going to be like. It seems a little bit odd to me. Like, are people going to touch me? Or like, I'm thinking of clubbing 30 in the morning. What's this going to be like? And then you get there and you see people on mats stretching, and some people are just moving. And I was like, can my body even move like that? I don't know. These people are so beautiful and pretty. Can I allow myself just to be, or am I going to be wanting to watch people? What is this? And it was fascinating to know. Pretty soon the music got started. I was like, I don't know. Do I get up? No one's getting up. And after a little bit, it was just my world. And all of that, like comes off, like all the guards come off. So that is something that I'm actually playing with all the time, is watching, like, where do I, just like that experience, all this, my guards go up, my body starts to protect me, my mind starts to protect me, and tells me all these funky, weird stories, where it's such a loving environment that I'm going into. So I play with that a lot. Those are some experiences I do. It comes with a lot of awareness, though. I've had a lot of coaching.
Yeah.
Some coaching over the years.
So do you work with a lot of coaches who will bring that side out of you? Is it always based around the masks and playing?
I've always worked with coaches that are exceptional at, let me back up. Here's how I work with coaches, and I would love to hear your opinion on this too, is I find coaches that are wildly successful a path that I would like to walk. My first coach that I was with for years actually was a law firm owner, sold it, and then became a coach. Fascinating that I'd walk the same journey. I didn't even know that was going to happen when I started working with her. And now I look for, like, what is in this person that I'm so drawn to? And I will watch, because I'm working with somebody this month actually, and a month ago I saw her, and I've known her. She's been in my realm for actually a few years. And I was at an event. She randomly shows up to the same event that I happened to be at. And when she sat next to me, I had a full freeze response show up in my body. I thought it was cold. Like, is it the air conditioning? Then I was like, no, I think it's her. And I'm very in tune with my body. And I was like, this is a sign. Everything in me is telling me, do not move forward. But I've thought about coaching with her for 2 years, and I leaned in and I was like, hey, I think it's time. It doesn't make any sense. Like, the investment, it doesn't make sense right now for where I'm at in business. Nothing makes sense, and it never does. But the resistance, like what your body will and your mind will resist the most, is always the way. Always the way. So I leaned in, and I'm working with her. And the way I saw it is, she's like, what in me do you wish you could embody? And I knew what it was right away. I've been thinking about it. I've been writing about it. So that's how I direct people to find their coach too. And it's like, if there's somebody that, like, there's something in them, you don't know, you just keep thinking about them and you're drawn to them, there's a reason. There's something already in you that person has that's waiting to come out.
Yeah. I suppose I'm slightly different, as a little bit random potentially. So I don't do a lot of research or tactically look at my next coach. I'm very leaning into my intuition. So I'll embody what I want from my point of view. So I will embody the next level of me and step into that energy and really step into, this is me, and see who comes. So I am very open to that next glimpse of who I need to work with. So when I did that around the time of going to New York, I'd met Jen very, very briefly when she did she did a virtual event for Amy Porterfield, and I just started following her on Instagram, and I liked her vibe, and I just thought, oh, I'd like to meet her one day, but that was it, kind of parked. And then when I've been doing the work around collapsing the timeline between me and the 7-figure CEO in me, literally within days, I got a text message on Instagram from Jen saying, doing this event, do you want to have a look? So I just lent into it. At the first, obviously that mask goes up, like, no, can't do that, can't go to New York, can't do any of that. Then I go, right, well, what would she do? And that's when I just went, right, apply. So I've been very sporadic with my coaches, but always really looked out. So I always join them, and they've got people there who's been like following them for years and doing all this stuff. And I'm kind of rock up on the first day and a bit like, I don't know much about them, but I love their energy. And that's where I really get bought in, just lean into what's my next thing. I think if you've done human design, I'm a manifesting generator. So I'm very about my sacral and, does this feel good? Does it not? And I trust it. And I really try and live that way.
Yeah, I'm a generator too. So I feel you. Yeah. And I think your description of how you lean in is so spot on. You're right. Like, it's, you elevate up to your next level. I did the same thing, and then they appear, because that's why it's Marla and Julian I'm working with. I've known them for 2 years, but it wasn't ripe. I wasn't at the point
Yeah.
where they were going to be brought in. But as soon as I was ready, she was sitting next to me in this event. So it was my sign, like, oh, move forward. It was my text message from the world being like, there
Yeah.
you go. Here's the
Yeah.
platter. Are you gonna take it?
And that's the thing, the universe will show you it and you're never going to miss it, are you? You're never going to miss what's for you. It'll just keep coming until you're at that stage where it's like, yes, that is the right thing.
Yeah, somebody shared with me about my human design. I'm sacral guided too. And they're just like, yeah, it comes as a whisper to you. And if you ignore it, it then comes back and continues to haunt you until you do something with it. And I was like, I thought that was hilarious. I was like, oh, that's true. Because I've got certain things that just spin on loops. It seems like I was like, there it is again. All right.
Well, like you said, when we first started talking before I hit record today, I was saying about it being a super full moon. So I know this is going out after this, but it was a super full moon in June. And I mentioned that to you and you were like, oh, I keep hearing about working with the moon. So that's definitely one thing to think about.
I was thinking of that when I actually brought that up because I'm getting it, slid in from the side, and the work other people do with the moons is like, here's what they mean in business. Like, here's this archetype and anointing oil that goes with the moons. And I was like, all right, Rachel, thanks for bringing that up again.
But I want to highlight that to people because I think people think that, they often sit there waiting for this lightning bolt of information that's suddenly going to change their whole life. And it doesn't happen that way. It's literally, like you say, that whisper, or your friend will mention something to you. You'll see it in a newspaper, you'll see it on Instagram. You're starting to ignore their messages where you're seeing something over and over again. That's the message, that's the sign. So I know a lot of people I work with, they're a bit like, I haven't got clarity and I haven't got this, but they're waiting for all the dots to come together. Whereas the first one is literally there in front of them and they're just not taking the step to go for it.
Yeah, you're completely right. Because if you can't, the dots won't all line up to make the huge change. It's the little whispers and following every single one of them that makes the huge change. Like that's how I, doubled my revenue in 6 months. That's how I did all these things. It's all about leaning into each of the whispers. And sometimes they're bizarre. I always think my whispers come to me and the next thing that comes out of my mouth is like, there it is. And then that doesn't make any sense. It's like, all right, open loop, Jen, leave space for the unknown and how it's going to come about. But there's your answer. And you don't get to know how it makes sense at this point. You just move forward with it.
Yeah.
And if it's something wrong for me, like with the sacral response, like it'll feel like, I'm not sure. That'll go through my head a lot where I'm like, that's not the right decision. Like if I feel somebody's trying to push something on me and it's not right for me, I've gotten to know that response as well. It's like, no, that's not right. Let it flicker out.
So just to help people, you've done some brave things along the journey. And how do you bring that up? How do you let yourself jump into those scary decisions and go for it?
One, what we just talked about, it comes in itty bitty little steps. It doesn't come all at once. Selling a law firm took me in November of 2019. I said it out loud for the first time, and I sold my law firm at the end of September of 2021. I no longer was a lawyer after that. So it takes time, and it was a whole bunch of little steps to make that happen.
Yeah.
And shifting my mind. But in me, it's just that there's like a fire inside of me, and it gets stronger and it burns brighter the more I follow the whispers and the more I play with the unknown, the more I realize I'm control on the inside, but like there's a piece that I'm not going to get. There's a piece that's not. And if you allow the mystery to be there and not make it wrong or try to plan around it and just be there, you can make huge shifts very quickly. I actually think it's a training to get used to making the little decisions. Is how you become brave enough to make the big ones. And people just have it in them.
Yeah.
We all do. Some people completely ignore it or are numb to it. But the people that have the fire in it know that they're like, oh, I have to do this. I have to know what's this life is all about. I have to try all the things.
Yeah.
And I'm one of those. And you must be one of those.
I am, but I do attract a lot of people who probably come to me because I am quite impulsive, shall we say, and they probably see me like diving in. But I think I do attract a lot of people who need the how, need that comfort, and need the plan. So And I suppose you coming from your background and being very logical and what you did, it was a big shift to make to trust the unknown. So how have you been able to do that and let yourself surrender?
And I should bring up, women come to me the same, like they're the planners of, I have to know all the steps before I can make the first move,
Yeah.
which isn't the way it works. Even investing in coaching or a program that you have, that's a first step. And a lot of people are like, that doesn't make sense. I was like, yeah, I know. Keep going. What was interesting is I've come to the point where I can look back where you say it was really brave to make all these steps to me. But there's been a bravery in me my whole entire life. I just didn't use it in the lens I was looking at. So if you use my business and choosing not to become a lawyer anymore, that seems extremely brave to let go of a law firm, a team, all these clients, and step into a new me. But then in my early 20s, I was this big risk taker in regards to my adventurous outdoorsy side. Like I've climbed 14, like the second tallest mountain in the United States. I've done rock climbing. I rappel. I go over rivers. Like I do like very high risk kind of outdoorsy thing. And that's all takes the same exact skills.
Yeah.
It's likely that everyone's doing it in a different way in their life, but they don't see it. It's like we don't see it to realize that we can apply it over here. And I think that's good to bring up because a lot of people don't see that, oh, you've been doing this in different ways your whole life. Haven't been using it in the one that feels the most scary because there's a lot tied to it, like money and taking care of family and getting yourself a house and a roof over your head and all this obligations tied to the one that seems the hardest.
And I think the choice is always there, and people get stuck in this, they feel like they don't have a choice or they've got to choose something for that security. But the choice is always there. It's just we assume that it takes a dip or there's something going to be dropped if they choose what they don't know. Does that make sense?
Oh, it totally makes sense. We fear the unknown. So then our mind tells us the stories of the past to fill in that fear, fill in the unknown and the void. And that's where a huge piece of the practice that I've had to take into, and I'm, like I said, I'll hire coaches to help me, is getting used to the fact that those fears are going to come up and I'll write them out and be like, but if none of that's true, what is true? Like, what's the opposite side of the spectrum where it's showing me to go? Because none of that's true. It's all past programming. Our fears are little liars. They're just illusions. The mirage in the, in the desert.
Yeah.
So it's playing with practicing of like, oh, I see this. Here's the fear. Now I have to practice something new.
Yeah. And if you're listening to this as well, and you might have been feeling this at the time, this super full moon will be a time for all of them to raise up, but to show you how to let go. So I know the full moon scares a lot of people because it's all, they feel their energy is just so much. There's so much old stuff coming to the surface, but that is the gift, because if it wasn't coming up, you wouldn't be able to release it. So I suppose your awareness that you brought into your practice, when you become aware, sometimes you feel like it's heavy, but actually it's a real gift, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is, because you have to let go to get something higher.
Yeah.
So being able to see it for its truth and what this illusion in our minds, the limiting beliefs, whatever you call it, what it's telling you is the gift.
Yeah.
And if you can practice yourself to see how beautiful it is, like see everything is like, wow, I'm really resisting this, or this feels really painful and heavy. Oh, thank you for showing me that.
Yeah.
This is fabulous. That means there's so much higher that I can go, and there's so much beauty on the other side of it. I mean, I've had some heavy moments where I was like, this is just cruel. But it all is my inside story. Even if I think somebody's being cruel to me, it's whatever my inside story was. And your mind can run loops around us and trying to, create us like a mummy. Like our minds tie us up to the point where we feel like not moving forward. And that's not what it's there for, to see the other side of it.
Yeah, I love that. So just to finish off, what advice would you give any women who are listening to this podcast who want to make a change?
So much I could give them. I think my best advice is lean into and know that I love to experiment with what am I attracted to? Sometimes people have a hard time visioning into their next self. Maybe they already have their next vision, but like if you could imagine your most fully expressed self or something you've seen in somebody else that just is, you can't stop thinking about them. What do they have? Because the truth is, you have that in you. It's just asking, it's like knocking on the door saying, please let me out. And be brave enough to take the steps forward to let it out. Because that's the joy, that's the juice, that's the excitement in life that's waiting for you when you take those steps.
Oh, that's such a good way of looking at it. You know, what you see in someone else that's already there. Oh, I love that. I've loved having you on. It's been amazing, and you'll have to come on again. There's so much we can talk about, and I think we've just scratched the surface of what you can share. So if anybody wants to connect with Jennifer, I've put all of the links and everything of how to get to know her, but what's your best way of connecting with you, Jen?
Yeah, so my website is breathefireinToLife.com, but some people can get there or not. Breathe is spelled with an E, like actual breathe, but they've forgotten a lot. Or Instagram, it's actually Jen, Jenn, period, Germaine, Germaine. That's where a lot of people connect with me. I always think that's fun and playful, and jumping on there and getting to see what other people are doing in their world as well.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, and I can't wait to speak to you next time.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Rachel. This has been so fun.
I'm Rachel Chamley, and you've been listening to the Manifesting Straight Talk podcast. If you're not already following me on social media, make sure you come and find me on Instagram. I'm at Rachel Chamley, or come and join the Manifesting Straight Talk Facebook group. All my details are in the show notes, so you can catch me there. But I hope you've been left feeling inspired after this podcast. It was so much fun. Join me next time for another episode of Manifesting Straight Talk.